What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Today we have a different type of video. Instead of doing coding today, I have a special guest that I want you guys to get to know a little bit better. He's also a fellow YouTuber and a iOS developer, but let me have him do his introduction instead.
What's up, guys? I'm Sean. Some of you may know me, Sean Allen. I've been an iOS engineer in San Francisco here for about 2 years. Self-taught. 2 years ago, I was just like you guys, trying to learn online, just watching videos. Don't have a CS degree, no programming background. Went through a boot camp about 2 years ago, Mobile Makers, in fact. Brian was an instructor there, not my instructor, but he was instructor there. So after I graduated there, got a job for the past year and a half, 2 years, and I've been on my way. So just started YouTube about 4 months ago, doing a lot of tutorials, vlogs, and just kind of sharing my thoughts. So thanks to Brian for some inspiration on getting started, seeing what he was doing in the YouTube space, and started myself.
So now that we all know who you are, Sean, I wanted to know what kind of work you're doing nowadays. I guess, maybe in terms of iOS development and just programming in general.
Yeah, so I currently have about 2 to 3 contracts. So I'm an independent contractor. I spent my first year and a half of the career at a startup doing the typical, working for a company. After that, I started to explore the contracting world because I wanted to see what it was like working for myself. It's been kind of interesting. I struggled at first because I was bored working out of my apartment all day, every day by myself. I found a shared workspace, which we're actually in now, called WeWork, and that has turned it around amazingly. So now I'm loving contracting, and I have 3 contracts now in various verticals, if you will. One is like a payment tracking app, one is a fitness app, and then another is more of a voice type app. So that's the cool thing about contracting, is you get to experience a lot of different types of apps in a short amount of time. Right.
So I was watching one of your other videos about contracting versus full-time employment, and it seems like you're trying to get into full-time employment now.
Well, WeWork is actually what changed it all. It's kind of funny. Like, yes, you're absolutely right. When I was working from home by myself, I didn't like contracting at all. So I was trying to get back into full-time because I didn't have human interaction. I was just sitting by myself all day. That was starting to wear on me. So I found WeWork. We're here on a Saturday, so it looks pretty empty. But normally it's full with 100 people here. So a lot of hustle going on. Get to meet people, network. They have networking events. So that has changed my perspective on contracting a complete 180 degrees. Now I'm loving it.
Yeah, that's nice, because I'm also trying to look for a place myself. Sometimes when you're doing work by yourself, all alone, it gets really boring.
Yeah.
And just seeing human interaction, people walking around, is like a big help.
Of course.
Right. So that kind of got you out of your somewhat procrastination rut,
yep,
if you will.
Yeah.
So you're like super productive now. And what's kind of your typical day look like?
Yeah, so I typically do about 6 hours of contracting work a day. Now you got to remember, 6 hours of work may sound like it's not a lot to somebody that has a typical 9 to 5, but when you're contracting, 6 hours of work is 6 hours of zoned in coding, which can be mentally draining. And when you're typically working at a company as a developer, you're not coding for 6 to 8 hours. Like, you're lucky at a company if you get 3 to 4 of zoned in coding hours a day. So when I say 6 hours, that's still a lot of work. But yeah, I typically come in here. I get here about 9. Work 9 to noon, take a lunch break, and then work about noon to 3 or 4, depending on. And then a lot of days I leave here at 4 to go play basketball because I'm a basketball junkie. So I can't give that up. And like you said, if you're sitting around coding all day, you got to be active. Like, you don't want to start getting very unhealthy. So I make it a priority to go play basketball. So that's kind of the typical day.
Right. That's awesome. I'm also a big basketball guy. Love playing it. That's the only source of physical activity I get.
Same here. Everything else is boring now. Like, I can't run. I can't lift. Like, I just want to go play basketball. I can't do anything else.
Yeah. What do you have for breakfast normally?
I normally don't eat breakfast.
Oh.
Sometimes they have a snack bar over there. Sometimes I'll grab some like very healthy Chips Ahoy cookies. Not very often, but yeah, normally I skip breakfast and just go right to lunch.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, that's probably not the healthiest way, but that's just part of my routine.
Yeah. I used to skip breakfast all the time myself. Yeah. And I just recently started getting into it.
I think it's because I'm lazy in the morning. Like, I don't want to make
here.
Breakfast.
Same here. It's the typical programmers. Yeah. So something else that I'm kind of interested in, kind of your backstory or the origin stories of Sean Allen from
yeah.
how you decided to get into programming in iOS.
It's an interesting story. I'll try to keep the first part of it short. Like I'm going to go all the way back to high school, but don't worry, it's not a super long story. So out of high school, I went in the military. I was on submarines. I decided to get out of the military because I didn't want to do 20 years to get that retirement check. And then I went to the family business, which was an all-state insurance agency. We own 3 agencies around the town I'm from. I was running one of those agencies. And basically at about 28, 29, I kind of realized I didn't want to be an insurance agent the rest of my life. Like, if you're an insurance agent, no offense, but who does, right? So I kind of realized, like, I was making decent money, and I realized, okay, life's not all about making money at a job. Like, I wanted to find a job I was passionate about and enjoyed going to work every day and didn't, like, dread going into work. So that led to me going back to school at the age of 29, which was a whole nother interesting experience, going to class with a bunch of 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then during that time class, which was paid for by the military, so I didn't have to go into debt or anything, so that was nice. But during that time, I started looking into San Francisco and made the decision that I was going to move out to San Francisco because I've always been obsessed with like startup culture. I've always been an early adopter. I've always been the first to get the new technology. So I figured this was a place for me. Saved up a bunch of money, moved out here. Didn't know anybody, didn't have a job lined up, just had enough savings to last about a year and tried to make it happen. So now we're getting to the development part. I got a job at a startup as sales and marketing background because that's kind of coming from insurance. And I became friends with other developers. It was a small startup, about 5 to 6 people, and started just asking like, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, what's that? And they started like telling me about coding and basically it was always kind of like intimidating for somebody that doesn't have a computer science background, never studied it. You kind of have this perception that like, oh, I could never learn how to program a computer, right? It's like daunting. Yeah. But once I started talking to them and they kind of like told me, no, you can do it. Yeah, you're perfectly fine. I started coding on the side, just HTML, CSS, building static websites, and just fell in love, caught the coding bug, and I've always been a huge Apple fanboy, so I decided to build apps, and it wasn't even a question, Android or Apple, it was Swift, and Swift had just come out at that time, so it was like perfect timing to get into it. So yeah, that's when I started self-teaching and applied to the boot camp, and I was on my way.
Right. So that was like 2014 or 2013.
Somewhere early 2015. So I left my job. So I left my job to pursue development full time to go to the boot camp, and I left the job in April of 2015. Went to Mobile Makers July of 2015.
Right. So you were July 15. I taught the spring of pretty much March 2016.
Okay. So was that one of the last cohorts?
That was the last cohort.
You ruined it. You killed it.
They eventually dissolved the entire adult section of Mobile Makers.
Yeah. I think of the high school kids now, right?
They're doing high school kids now. Yeah.
Which is cool. I like that. I mean, teach them young, in my opinion. Like.
Yeah. The earlier you start, I feel like the faster you'll get it.
Agreed.
And sometimes, especially when I was teaching at Mobile Makers, all of those students were a little older, probably average age of 26, 27. Had already graduated college, and most of them did not have a computer science background. And they were all able to get it eventually. Like some dropped out, and then some continued with like a lot of success. Right.
I remember my cohort, I felt like the dumbest kid in the class, and I consider myself pretty smart and humble too. But I felt like the dumbest kid in the class because everybody in my cohort, we only had 9 people. They had a computer science background, or were coming from another language, or were actually like CS students. So I was one of 2 people that literally had no background. So I was learning programming basics while they were just kind of like learning iOS. Yeah. So I had an uphill battle to climb, but it worked out well.
Yeah. A lot of the students, even though some of them had computer science backgrounds, I found that they actually weren't even that strong in coding.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. And then as they progressed, each day they got better and better. And of course, some students we actually let go because they couldn't, I guess, make the cut.
Interesting.
The first week cut.
Yeah.
That was my kind of experience as an instructor.
No, I had the same experience where you were talking about the progress. Yeah. So my very first test, you'll know what I'm talking about, they might not. At the end of each week, you do an assessment where you basically build a coding project by yourself. So you're learning in a group the whole week, and then at the end of the week, you take a test where you actually build an app based on what you learned that week. My test grades I think I got like a 58 on the first one. I've never got a 58 in my life on anything. And then the second one was like a 72. The third one was like a 76, and then it was like an 80, and then my last one was like a 93, which was on core data. So I definitely like progress, but I started off pretty bad.
Yeah. I know there are like certain weeks where some of the topics are much harder.
Mm-hmm.
I remember teaching core data, which was...
That was the last one for us. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know if they mixed up the curriculum, but...
Yeah, that was like mid course. And then we went over things like custom delegation, which a lot of the students found difficult.
Delegation took me forever to learn. I did not, by the end of the boot camp, I still didn't understand it. It was like 8 months into my career until I like finally understood it.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but...
Yeah, that's kind of like object-oriented programming. That's huge, right? Everywhere you go, they talk about it, but it's not until you actually get into the weeds
Yep.
you understand it.
Yeah. You may think you understand it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. It's a totally different beast, kind of like MVC and all these architectures that you hear about now. So what do you think about code architectures in general? How do you approach it? Do you use it?
Use it, but I've stuck mainly to the MVC. And here's why. In the contracts, well, that's what I did at the first startup. So the first startup I was at had 2 products. We spent most of the time building the one, and that was MVC. The next product, which we started working on right before I left, but we decided to go MVVM on that. So I started learning MVVM and started dabbling, but I've never like built a full project in it. And then now that I'm contracting, under contracting, we're on time constraints all the time. Like we have to deliver it to the client by X date, and we're usually always pushing, that timeline. So we haven't really had time to experiment with different architectures and learn it. So we've just stuck with the tried and true MVC due to time constraints with my contracting. I'm not against learning a new one. It's just I haven't had the chance to yet.
Yeah, a lot of the students I have asked me about what the difference between MVC, MVVM, and maybe like Viper, Pop, Solid.
There's so many now.
Yeah, a lot of these topics I feel like they're super advanced to the point where unless you want to really optimize your code for efficiency, that's when you'll use it. But for the most part, MVC makes like everything easier.
For most projects, I would assume,
So one thing I'm kind of curious about is I've been doing programming for a while, just all over the place. And there are a lot of things that I kind of dislike about programming. And for me personally, something like testing is the thing that I hate doing the most because it's so time consuming.
Right.
Like, what are your some of dislikes?
So do you mean testing like unit testing or like actually like testing the app and bug fixes or both? Because they're both bad, in my opinion.
I hate unit testing a little more, but you're right. They're both bad.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say bad. They're just not fun to do, right? Programming, in my opinion, is super fun. Like, it's almost like magic. You have an idea, you write some code, and you can build it, and it shows up. Yeah. However, the whole testing aspect of thing is one of those like necessary evils. Like, you have to do it, but it's not the fun, magical part. Yeah. So definitely testing. Trying to think of something different. I don't want to just piggyback your answer. I mean, maybe I'm just too early in my career. Like nothing has gotten super old to me yet, and I'm still like amazed by like new stuff that I learned how to do. Maybe I'm still in the honeymoon phase of my career.
Do you find it to be too much work at times? More than 8 hours a day, maybe? Oh,
it's definitely more than 8 hours a day. Especially like I mentioned, having like multiple contracts, but that's kind of like my own doing. I didn't have to do that, but it's absolutely a lot of work. But to me, again, because it might be still early, but it doesn't feel like work all the time. Like, to me, programming is not only my job, it's my hobby. So I would kind of be coding like anyway. Again, maybe that's because I'm only 2 years in my career. I'm not an old veteran like you, but I still love it. Hopefully that doesn't go away, but I still do. Do you find it's gone away for you a little bit, or?
So I feel the same way. When I started, I really, really wanted to just learn every language out there, and then so I kind of got my feet wet in ActionScript and then Java, and then web stuff, and now I'm in mobile. So if you find yourself getting bored of something, just move on. There's so many different options out there.
And new technologies coming out all the time. Yeah. I mean, I think this is way off topic, but I think ARKit's going to be huge. Like, I haven't dived into it yet too much, aside from like the basics, but man, just seeing all the stuff people put out on Twitter, like all the examples they're putting out. And you have to remember, this is only like, it's not even out of beta yet. Like, right, Xcode 9 and ARKit is still in beta, not going to be released till September, and people are doing amazing things with it. So the rumored Apple glasses coming out that are AR, like I don't know. I just think AR could be huge, but that's just an example of how technology is always changing. And if you get bored, there's always some cool new thing coming out that you can dive into. Yeah,
there's always something new. And every year, that's kind of what attracts a lot of Apple iOS developers, because Apple is constantly releasing new technologies. And they, spice up things every year at WWDC.
Yep. It's like Christmas every year, WWDC.
Yep. Yep. So a lot of you guys that haven't followed Sean's channel on YouTube, he has one.
What are you doing? Why haven't you followed it yet?
You can find that down in the link below. And yeah, some of you guys know that I've been doing it for like a year and a half. I've had my ups and downs, you know, things that haven't gone well for me personally. And sometimes I get stuck creatively. So I don't know, what kind of struggles have you, or do you enjoy doing YouTube?
I mean, I love doing YouTube, and I've only been doing it for about 4 months, so my channel's still pretty young. So I feel like I haven't hit a roadblock like that. I understand they're probably coming. What I struggle with in YouTube is, because I'm doing all this contracting work on the side too, is just managing my time and being able to put out, you know, good quality videos and do my work. So that time management, because it is a full-time job. A lot of people don't realize, oh, you just make YouTube videos, but I mean, you got to come up with the idea, you got to build the app, you have to make sure it makes sense to people that are just learning, then you got to edit it, and then even after you post it, there's a lot of work you got to do. So it's almost a full-time job.
Yeah.
I mean, you are doing it full-time.
I am indeed. For me, it's like 12 hours a day, I would say. Yeah.
I think people underestimate how much work goes into it.
Yeah. So all of the comments down below, I read all of them.
I do too.
Yeah. I try to reply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been lucky. I don't know if you can say this, but I've been lucky. I haven't gotten pretty much any hate. I've had a couple people challenge the code, like one little bit of it, but they've done it in a way that was constructive and like starting a discussion. It wasn't like, you're an idiot, your code was wrong. It was like, hey, why don't you try doing it this way? And then, you know, sometimes they're right. Sometimes I have to, you know, yep. I'm right, you know, but the point is, like, it's a discussion. Like, I'm not claiming to be an expert, and neither are they when they say it. We're just talking about ideas, and that's kind of the whole point. People coming in, discussing it, and figuring out the best way to do it. Yeah.
I also welcome any type of input that the viewers have. Sometimes I do get a little bit annoyed and frustrated at the comments.
Maybe it's because I'm not as big as you yet, but I've been lucky with any hateful comments or bad people. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, so how do you come up with new ideas for each video?
Yeah, so a lot of times, for those that aren't familiar with my channel, I do a couple different video types. I do basic tutorials, like you kind of see everywhere, but I also do thoughts on, like, you know, how my contracting is going, or contracting versus full-time, just thoughts about the industry in general and life as a developer. And then I also do a coding interview challenges and basic iOS interview questions. And then I do a vlog, which there's not a lot of iOS YouTuber vlogs out there, just chronicling my day, basically as an iOS developer in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, and kind of what that's like. So how I come up with video ideas, the vlog is pretty easy, right? Because that's just what's going on in my life. It's pretty easy. The interview questions was easy too, because I've just, the past 6 months, made the rounds to pretty much every major company here in Silicon Valley. So I feel like I have a very fresh take on what they're asking and what they're requiring. And then a lot of times it's just in my contracting, I'll be coding, and if I have to look something up and how to do it, I'm like, okay, that's probably a good idea for a video. So a lot of it is actually just my own work and stuff that I've come across, and I just make a note of it, and then I kind of go through my notes and see what video is easiest to make that week. Just due to time constraints, you know? It's like, what video is going to take me the quickest to make, you know?
Yeah, I go through the similar struggles where sometimes I'm struggling to find something creative and fun for, you know, the viewers to watch, and then it just happens that, oh, this project is actually pretty interesting and easy to teach. Yeah. So I'll just use that as a tutorial video.
Yeah. Well, it's also easier for me, I think, because like I said, I've been doing it 4 months. You've been doing it pretty much over a year longer than me. So if I fast forward a year from now, putting out 3 to 4 videos a week, yeah, maybe I would be running short on ideas or struggling. But right now I have a huge backlog. Like, that's not going to be an issue for the near future. Maybe I'll run into it, you know, a while from now.
That's a good thing about programming technology. There's just so much to talk about. And there's a lot of things that you'd be surprised that you'd find interesting.
Yeah. What I found interesting was, and this is totally stupid, but regular expressions, and like how they're like, you know, how you can validate an email or validate a password, you know, making sure there's an uppercase letter or a number, you know, like, and like when I first did that, I was like, oh man, this is confusing. But as I dove into it, I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And just the way they do it with all the different like character things. Yeah.
Regular expressions is one of the most powerful things that you can learn.
Yeah.
I was planning on doing a video on it soon.
I'm going to beat you to it. Yeah, just kidding.
No, I feel like regular or regex is one of those things that you learn and then you forget immediately.
Yeah. I'm always going to have to look that up, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what a star is and a slash.
Right, yeah. Anybody that has that memorized, good for you. Like,
anything else you want to talk about just in general, programming advice that you would give people?
The advice I always give people, and I get a lot of this on my channel, is to just don't get discouraged and keep at it. Look at it as like a marathon if you're just learning. I'm assuming if you're watching Brian's channel or if you're watching my channel, you're trying to be an iOS developer. You're learning. Just keep pushing through. It's like I mentioned earlier with Delegation. I didn't understand Delegation until 8 months into my career, not 2 weeks into my boot camp. Like I was a full-time iOS engineer before I fully understood it. So, and that's kind of embarrassing to say, but the point is, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're going to learn this stuff eventually, and it takes a long time. Don't be discouraged if you've been doing it for a month or two and you're not getting it. Like, don't give up that easy. Like, if you're truly passionate about it and you want this to be your career, stick with it and you'll get there.
Yeah, totally agree. You said it better than I could. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed the nice talk that we had with Sean. And if you have any questions, where can we find you?
YouTube.com/Sean Allen is my channel. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm obsessed with Twitter. So it's at SeanA0400. And the same thing on Instagram too. So hit me up. I'm happy to help with any questions you have.
Yep. And you offer sessions, mentoring sessions.
Yeah, I do coaching sessions. They're all booked up right now. But feel free to be on a wait list. So I sell sessions in packages of 3, and we do anything from I'll give you projects to build, and we'll go over beginner code. Or if you're working on a project, I'll dive into that code base with you and help you get it out the door. For example, my most recent student, he had the project about 80% done, and then with my help, we got in there, we got him over the last second hurdles, and it's now on test flight out to his beta testers, hopefully on the App Store in a couple weeks.
Very nice. That's a really good service that you're offering.
I appreciate it. I'm having fun too, and I'm actually learning from it. Like, people are asking me all these specific questions about their app, and that's the thing with technology is like it's impossible to have worked on everything and to know everything. So when they ask me questions, I have to be like, all right, I guess I gotta learn that real quick, and then dive in with them.
Perfect material for another video.
Yep,
actually.
Exactly.
All right, so that's gonna be it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah,
appreciate it. It was awesome.
So see you guys in the next video.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.